Hey, today we're very fortunate to have Roger Blackwell with us. He's had a very distinguished career, spending most of his academic career at Ohio State University. He's the father of consumer behavior, had one of the first leading consumer behavior books. But the reason we're talking to him today is because he served on 13 public boards, worked with many CEOs. And Roger, I'd just like to ask you, what do students need to know about what happens at the C level, at the top level, with the top officers and the board of directors? Or is this just so foreign to students that they don't need to know how that system works?
No, I think that they really do need to study corporate boards very thoroughly, what kind of people are on the directors board, and I think they also have to have a philosophy about why people get into trouble. Now, I've known many CEOs, CMOs, CFOs, and I don't find many who intend to do something wrong. But what happens is they just need a little more earnings for the quarter, or a little more money to pay for tuitions for students, whatever. And John D. Rockefeller was asked, what amount of money does it take to have everything you want? And the world's richest man at that point said, just a little more. And that's what gets people into trouble, is they just need a little bit more. So if you understand that it's a marshmallow world, and by that I remember, I hope you remember the marshmallow experiments at Stanford, in which they looked at students, very young people, who chose to delay gratification and get 2 marshmallows instead of immediately take 1. Those people had higher, 20 years later, had SAT scores that were higher, had lower body fat, had more successful marriages. The ones who win in the long run are the ones who take the long-term view instead of immediate rewards, immediate profits. The tyranny of the now will cause more problems to people than if they delay gratification and take the long-term view.
Roger, that was great, but what do you see as the themes that should be taught in business ethics? And is there a need for change? I mean, should we be changing some of the themes that we're teaching in business ethics?
Well, I think so. I believe there is a change occurring, which is not necessarily good for business ethics. I've seen this change from teaching what is right to do, which is the traditional approach of business ethics, to teaching what is legal to do. And legality and ethical behavior are not always closely correlated. We certainly want to be legal, but sometimes we need to abandon principle and do what is right. Now, how do you make those kind of decisions? And in my judgment, we need to be teaching more about values. Corporate values, personal values, but we could even be talking about national values. But from a corporate standpoint, what would you do? And if I were teaching this course today, I would ask students to go on the website. It's one of the wonders of the internet, is that we can go on and get corporate values listed. Now, when I talk about values, in my consumer behavior book and other places, we talk about shared beliefs or norms of behavior. And I think it's important to teach students the difference between words, which are traditionally called terminal values, because they're the end result of what we're looking to achieve, and instrumental values, or the behavior. And it means the whole team. It means the whole group of people adopting norms of behavior. And I would encourage professors who are teaching this to have the students look at the values and say, okay, what are the words? It might be integrity, it might be passion, it might be quality. There are many different ones that people will say. And then say, well, how would you measure that in behavior? What would you expect? And I can say this, that no manager, no chief executive has the right to believe his or her employees will do the right thing if they haven't been inculcated with that value. You cannot assume people have that value today. In fact, I think you can assume they're less likely to than in the past. And so we look at the behavior, and I would give an assignment to students in which I would say, look at the values of firms as you find them on their website, and write down the words, and then separately say what behavior would you expect from that, with exact examples. I also happen to believe, and there's good scholarly evidence to indicate that the firms that have the most effective values are, in the long run, the most profitable firms. And there was, of course, a classic book by Harvard professors Cotter and Heskett, which gives documentation of that, and a very popular book called about firms that are built to last. That was the most popular book of the decade by Collins and Porras. And there's plenty of academic, scholarly research to show that the firms with the best values win in the long run. And so I would encourage students, if I were teaching this course, to identify those firms, what kind of behavior, and then I believe it's appropriate also to ask them to, as students, to write their own personal values that will guide them in the rest of their business career.
So you're kind of saying that this could be a good class project. A class project where let's go out and look at the values of companies, look at their performance, and then you're saying to students, maybe write down your values?
Yes, I would say, if you go to work for a firm, how do their values coincide with your own values? And you might say, well, I think I need to adopt their values or adapt my own. Or I have increasingly been studying how entrepreneurs grow from small firms to large firms, and especially with attention to private firms. And the firms that have values, which normally reflect the founders, frankly, are the ones that grow and prosper and are built to last, just as the popular book topic title said. And students probably aren't asked to think about that very much. In the past, schools sometimes taught that. The liberal arts sometimes emphasize that. I believe in business schools. See, I'm one of these funny people who believe that business can be taught as a liberal art and have the same emphasis on conceptual models and the philosophical, if not theological, underpinnings of value systems. And of course, values differ greatly depending on the culture you come from. And in a global environment, we need to examine the values of different cultures to see if we can find some common culture that allows firms to operate on a global basis without violating the Federal Corrupt Practices Act and the other laws that do increasingly occupy a lot of money and talent of corporate executives today.
I'd like to ask you a final question. And what I like about what you're saying is a positive approach, because I think too many times a class, they talk about all the bad things that can go wrong. But on the other hand, while we may focus on values and understanding that ethical companies are the most profitable in the long run, if you were looking at a group of entry-level employees, our students who may be getting a job soon, what would you tell them to be aware of in terms of risks that they might face?
Well, I think every person who's taking a job should ask, does the culture of this corporation match with my own personal values? And just asking that question forces the thought that's likely to clarify that. And there are some corporations where you really wouldn't want to be a part of them, even though the financial payoff might be great. And I think we've seen some examples of corporations that have very fast ascendancies in their stock value and so forth, and didn't last. And I think that the tyranny of the immediate profit, the quarterly earnings, if that is the thrust of everything that's done in a corporation, that's a dangerous situation with high risk. I work today more with entrepreneurial firms, usually family owned, and I love to see a person who has such strong values that they just permeate the whole organization. But if you can't write down your values, you probably don't know them. And if, as a chief executive or founder of an entrepreneurial firm, if you You might say, well, I know my values even though I can't write them down. Your employees probably don't know them. So you really need to focus on understanding the values. Mars Corporation, a very successful family-owned corporation, gives a 27-page booklet to every new employee describing the values and what that means in behavior. And I believe students should, even if they're not challenging the values that they're there, they say, it looks okay to me, they should ask themselves, what does that mean in the practical decisions I would make, whether it's in marketing, in accounting, finance, whatever it might be.
Roger, we really want to thank you for sharing these insights, and I know they're going to be very beneficial to people teaching business ethics.
Well, thank you. Business is a wonderful career, and it can be done very, very well. It can be done very poorly. It can be done profitably, and it can be done ethically as well.
That's a great way to end. Thank you.